Hello again, everybody. Today we're going to watch some reenactors at Point Park. So let's go in and take a look and see what we can see, shall we? Come on, let's go have some fun.
To Point Park, and this weekend we have some living historians out with us representing Western Federal Infantry, much like the soldiers of the Union Army would have been in 1863. We talk about Western Federals at the time of the Civil War here in Chattanooga in 1863. These soldiers are largely from states like Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota. That was considered the West at that time. What we call the upper Midwest, or maybe the Great Lakes states of today. And they came from various occupations, because after all, when the Civil War broke out, our United States military was not very large. So on both sides, they have to recruit volunteers who sign up to fight in the Union or Confederate armies. They come from a variety of backgrounds: school teachers, clerks, shopkeepers, merchants, farmers. Similar occupations to some that we still have today. Excuse me. And the reason they come down here in 1863 for a campaign for Control Chattanooga, 5-month campaign total, for a town of just 2,500 people. So Chattanooga is very small compared to today's population, which is approximately 170,000. So why then are all these soldiers here? Why are their respective governments so interested in controlling a town of 2,500 people?
That's scary, because it was a gateway from north to south to this point.
Okay, it was kind of a gateway to the deep south, kind of a gateway from the upper south into the lower south. And Chattanooga is located near the southern end of the Appalachian Mountain Range. So as you go into Georgia and Alabama and get out of the mountains, central Georgia and central Alabama had a large network of cities, including Atlanta, Macon, Augusta, Columbus, Selma, and Montgomery, that were producing a lot of the things that you needed for a war effort in the southern states. Things like clothing, ammunition, gear. A lot of that is being produced in central Georgia and central Alabama. So the thought is, if the Union Army can get control of Chattanooga, it has a supply and communication base to conduct a campaign further south and potentially capture and destroy some of these industrial centers, and perhaps bring the war to an end sooner than what's happening in the summer of 1863. Chattanooga is also important because it is a railroad hub. No fewer than 4 major rail lines come into Chattanooga at the time of the Civil War. So the army that controls Chattanooga controls the rails, and therefore has easy access to receiving supplies and reinforcements by way of these various rail lines. So those are the primary reasons that we have a campaign for Chattanooga in 1863. Now, those common soldiers, like I mentioned, they're common folks like you and I, from similar backgrounds, similar ethnic backgrounds as well. And Joseph here is going to describe a little bit more about the clothing that they are wearing, the gear that they are carrying, and one of the questions that I know you want to ask him on the top of your mind is that uniform hot?
No. In fact, with this breeze, it's pretty nice. And it is very heavy wool. For anybody that's done any sewing, this stuff is 20-ounce wool, which means it weighs 1.25 pounds per square yard, which is a lot for fabric. I'll start talking about the clothes first because I am a tailor, so that really is my area of expertise. This is called a frock coat, this long coat. You'll notice we have one more of them on the end there. This was the style of clothing that the average person wore when he went to town. If he was a farmer or if he was a townsperson, this is what he wore all the time. And this coat specifically is the U.S. Army dress code at the time of the war. And you went into battle in your dress uniform by regulation. Things got relaxed as the Army grew in size, because before the war, there were about 9,000 combat troops in the Army. By the end of the war, a little over 3 million had served in the Union Army. Well, to make things a little bit cheaper for clothing those masses, they started wearing a different kind of coat known as the fatigue blouse or sack coat, because they said it fit like a sack. It's baggier, it's what you see these three wearing, and one more on the Sergeant Major. And if you notice, it looks very similar to the modern day suit coat. It's because folks wore this before the war, and it's tight, it's form-fitting. If it's your coat, not some issue Army thing, it's made to you. It forces you to stand up straight. Then 3 million guys got used to wearing more comfortable clothes. They came home, they wanted to wear the more comfortable style of clothes. So that is where we have the modern day suit. Everybody's wearing the same gear, might be a little bit different in look or manufacture, but everything we have on, our clothing looks vastly different from Confederates, but our actual equipment, Confederates would have had the same stuff because they were all using the same guns, fighting the same ways. I have here a food bag called a haversack. I've got a frying pan in it, a fork, a spoon, and I'd be given 3 days worth of food, usually some sort of beef or pork, and then cornmeal or hardtack, even rice, some sort of starch. And you got 3 days worth of food at a time. Sometimes on a campaign they try and give you more. I have a knapsack, which I might store any extra food I have. I also have my bed in here, because as infantrymen we walk everywhere, and there aren't wagons for us to hold all our extra stuff. So if you want to keep something, you got to carry it, including your bed. And examples of that are the bed rolls behind the guys that y'all can check out after this. To load the musket, an infantryman, which is what we are, the artillery has cannons, the cavalry has horses. Infantrymen do all the real fighting and take the ground. You draw a paper cartridge out of your cartridge box. In the bottom of it there'd be a bullet. This is just blank. Then gunpowder. Tear it off with your teeth, pour it down the barrel, push the bullet in. That means to be an infantryman, you had to have a top tooth and a bottom tooth that matched up. When they started the draft, a lot of guys thought, well, I'll get out of the draft by knocking all my top teeth out or all my bottom teeth. That's okay, they still got drafted. You stick them in the artillery with cannons where you don't need teeth. Then the soldier, and to push the bullet down the barrel with the ramrod, got to seat it all the way, otherwise it could blow up. Not hard to do until it gets dirty, and they get dirty very quickly. Then you must return the ramrod, one of the most important steps, because if you don't, it might look neat to skewer somebody with it, but then you have a 10-pound club that you can't load with people shooting rifles at you from hundreds of yards away. Then they take a brass top hat looking thing called a cap. I have one somewhere. It's got fulminate of mercury in it. Place it on the nipple under the hammer. When the hammer strikes it, it sends the spark into the barrel, igniting the powder, firing the ball. A cap and ball musket. A good, well-trained soldier could fire 3 rounds in a minute. And they practice this 8, 10, 12 hours a day, because you practice and practice and practice until your soldiers can do it without thinking. You don't want soldiers thinking. Privates are not allowed to think, because if they think in the chaos of battle, they will mess up. If you're not in battle and they're just sitting around camp thinking, they're going to be thinking about how much they miss mama's cooking and how nice it'd be at home instead of at war anymore, so they might desert. So you keep them busy so that when they're not busy, they're tired.
Ready?
Now this will be a little loud. Anybody with sensitive ears, little ones.
Recover arm.
Now that's an example of a volley fire. Everybody fired at one time, because that allows you to amplify the effect of your muskets in sort of a shotgun blast effect. This is how they fought with smoothbore muskets, because they can only get about 40 yards away. By the time of the Civil War, you see a lot more rifles. Now you're talking 500 to 900 yards away. Now they're going to fire down the line, and then they'll fire around as fast as they can, fire at will. So it's just a different way to shoot so that you don't have everybody unloaded at one time like with the volley fire.
Still using General Steuben's tactics that time, weren't they?
No, sir.
Oh, yeah?
No, sir. They hadn't been using von Steuben's Field Manual 1, as the United States Army likes to call it now, by that time for about 55 years.
Really?
Yes, sir.
I thought we used that in Civil War.
There were variations on it, but the weapons changed, and we sent so many people, so many officers to hang out with the French Army that our guys were coming back writing manuals that they were trying to be as cutting edge as possible. For instance, General Scott wrote over a dozen manuals in the 4 decades before the Civil War.
Ready? Aim. Fire.
Now that was just placing a cap on, because when we're shooting blanks here, it's really easy not to notice that your musket didn't fire because there is no recoil. The same thing could happen in battle, in the chaos of battle. You might not notice your musket fired. There have been muskets dug up from battlefields that the barrel is half full with 7 or 8 rounds in them, where guys just kept loading. They didn't notice a ramrod was hanging out this far because he's terrified. And if one of those did go off, then that would explode. And they never really wanted to get close enough to be able to use this thing, because why get this close when you can shoot somebody hundreds of yards away? So the bayonet, which we all know is French for pointy thing of death, it got used for other things. Poke around the campfire, use it as a candle holder. The grotesque thing that everybody loves to hear about so much is that they would take bayonets from dead soldiers, bend them over, turn them into hooks to drag corpses into graves. Now we're going to go through just a little bit of the manual of arms, more things that soldiers would drill for hours a day, different ways to carry the musket. And anybody that's familiar with the modern manual of arms may notice some similarities. Right shoulder shift, arms. Looks uncomfortable and awkward, actually the most comfortable way to carry a musket. Get it up on a balance point, you can walk all day like that. Shoulder, arms. Support, arms. This one's really uncomfortable and awkward, so that's why officers who've never carried a musket or did years ago and forgotten how uncomfortable this one is, that's why they call it and forget about it. Shoulder, arms. Carry, arms. Modern day left shoulder. Shoulder, arms. Present, arms. That's the soldier salute. That's their way of saying thank you.
Folks,
Shoulder,
let's give them a good hand
arms.
for assisting us this week.
Order, arms. Thank you all very, very much.
And this is stacking the rifles. And this is their gear on the ground. This is one of the rare tents that you would see. Most of the infantry would not have a tent. They'd have to carry stuff with them. See, that's what you'd see mostly, is that kind of thing. Well guys, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. I am off to do some more journeys, so until then, go on some journeys of your own. We'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.